Look, I need you to pay attention to something that's been happening right under your nose. There's a war going on, and most men don't even realize they're targets. It's not fought with weapons or armies. It's fought with whispers, judgments, and a quiet, calculated suspicion that follows you everywhere you go. And the worst part? You've probably felt it without even knowing what it was. That uncomfortable tension when you tell someone you don't want kids. That subtle shift in how people look at you when you say you're focused on yourself. That nagging feeling that society has already decided something is wrong with you because you chose a different path. You're not imagining it. It's real. And Machiavelli understood this game 500 years ago. He knew that the moment you step outside the system, the moment you refuse to play by the rules everyone else follows, you become dangerous. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your very existence challenges everything they've built their lives around. You chose freedom over obligation, independence over dependence, self-mastery over self-sacrifice, and that terrifies them. Because if you can be happy without following their script, what does that say about their choices? What does that say about the life they convinced themselves they had to live? So they do what people have always done when confronted with something that threatens their worldview. They attack, they label, they ostracize. They make you the problem so they don't have to question themselves. And here's what most men don't understand. This isn't personal. It's strategic. It's a defense mechanism built into the fabric of society itself, designed to keep you in line, keep you productive, keep you serving a system that benefits from your compliance. Machiavelli saw through this centuries ago. He understood that power doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being feared, and nothing makes the collective more uncomfortable than a man who doesn't need them. A man who has built his life on his own terms, who doesn't require validation, who isn't looking for permission to exist. That man is a threat, not because he's violent or aggressive, but because he's proof that their way isn't the only way, and that's unforgivable. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. When was the last time you made a decision purely for yourself, without worrying about what other people would think? When was the last time you did something that served your happiness, your goals, your vision of what your life should be, without feeling guilty about it? If you're struggling to answer that question, you're not alone. Most men can't, because from the moment you're born, you're being programmed. Programmed to believe that your value comes from what you provide. Programmed to believe that your worth is measured by how well you serve others. Programmed to believe that if you're not sacrificing yourself for something bigger, you're selfish, immature, incomplete. And the ultimate test of this programming? Family. Specifically, whether or not you have one. Because in the eyes of society, a man without a family isn't just unusual. He's suspicious. He's unfinished. He's someone who hasn't yet learned his place. And this isn't some modern phenomenon. This is ancient. Machiavelli wrote about it in The Prince. He understood that the state, the collective, the social order, all depend on one thing: predictability. They need to know what motivates you. They need to know what controls you. And for most men, that control comes through family, through wife, through children, through the obligations and responsibilities that tie you to the system and make you manageable. Because a man with a family is a man with something to lose. He can be leveraged. He can be pressured. He can be kept in line through fear of what might happen to the people he loves. But a man without those attachments, a man who has nothing to lose, that man is dangerous. Because you can't control him. You can't manipulate him. You can't threaten him with the loss of something he never wanted in the first place. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because society doesn't just distrust men without families. It actively works to punish them. Think about it. When you're single and childless, you're taxed more heavily. You receive fewer benefits. You're excluded from certain social circles. You're questioned about your choices in ways that married men with children never are. People assume something is wrong with you. That you're immature, that you're selfish, that you're broken. And if you're successful, if you're happy, if you're thriving without the traditional family structure, that makes it even worse. Because now you're not just refusing to play the game, you're winning without it. And that's the ultimate insult to everyone who sacrificed their freedom, their ambitions, their autonomy, because they thought they had to. Machiavelli understood this dynamic perfectly. He knew that the greatest threat to any established order isn't the person who fights against it openly. It's the person who simply opts out and succeeds anyway, because that person exposes the lie. The lie that you need to conform to be happy. The lie that you need to follow the script to have a meaningful life. The lie that your value is determined by how well you serve the collective rather than how well you serve yourself. So what's the real reason society treats men without families like threats? It's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because you're doing something right. You're living proof that the system is optional, that the sacrifices they demanded of everyone else weren't actually necessary, that freedom and self-determination are possible, even in a world that tells you they're not. And that's terrifying to people who gave up those things without questioning whether they had to. This is psychological warfare, and most men don't even realize they're fighting it. They internalize the judgments. They feel the guilt. They start to believe that maybe something really is wrong with them for not wanting what everyone else wants. And that's exactly what the system needs you to believe. Because the moment you start doubting yourself, the moment you start thinking that maybe you should just conform, just settle, just do what everyone else is doing, that's the moment they win. That's the moment you give up your power and hand it over to a system that will use it against you for the rest of your life. But here's what Machiavelli would tell you if he were alive today. Your power doesn't come from conforming. It comes from refusing to. Your strength doesn't come from being like everyone else. It comes from being different. And your freedom doesn't come from doing what society expects. It comes from doing what serves you, regardless of what anyone else thinks about it. Because at the end of the day, the people judging you aren't living your life. They're not paying your bills. They're not waking up in your body every morning. They're not the ones who will have to live with the consequences of your decisions. You are. And the sooner you understand that their opinions are irrelevant, the sooner you can start building the life you actually want instead of the life they think you should have. Now, before we go any further, I want to know something. What city are you watching this from right now? Drop it in the comments because I'm genuinely curious where this message is reaching and what part of the world is waking up to this reality. Let's build something here. So let's dig deeper into what Machiavelli actually understood about this dynamic, because most people misread him completely. They think he was advocating for cruelty and manipulation, but that's not it at all. Machiavelli was a realist. He looked at human nature and society without the romantic delusions that most people cling to. And what he saw was this: people are fundamentally self-interested. They act based on what benefits them, and they create systems and social norms that protect their interests. And one of the biggest systems we've created is the family structure. Not because it's inherently good or bad, but because it serves a function. It creates predictable units of production and consumption. It generates new workers, new taxpayers, new participants in the economic machine. It ties people down with obligations that make them easier to control. And most importantly, it gives society a way to measure your value and determine whether you're a contributing member or a threat to the established order. When you choose not to participate in this system, you're not just making a personal choice. You're making a political statement. You're saying that you don't accept the premise that your value is determined by your willingness to sacrifice your autonomy for the collective good. And that's revolutionary. That's dangerous. That's exactly the kind of thinking that Machiavelli knew would get you labeled as a threat. Because the system doesn't just want your compliance, it wants your belief. It wants you to internalize the idea that the only way to be a good man, a complete man, a successful man, is to follow the path that's been laid out for you since birth. And when you refuse to believe that, when you demonstrate through your life that there are other ways to find meaning and fulfillment and success, you become living evidence that everything they've been telling everyone else is a lie. And this is why the response to men without families is so visceral, so emotional, so disproportionate to the actual choice being made. Because it's not really about you at all. It's about them. It's about their need to believe that the sacrifices they made were necessary, that the paths they chose were the only reasonable options, that their lives have meaning because they did what they were supposed to do. And your existence, your happiness, your success without making those same sacrifices, it threatens that narrative. It creates cognitive dissonance. It forces them to confront the possibility that maybe they had choices they didn't fully explore. Maybe they gave up freedoms they didn't have to give up. Maybe they're not as fulfilled as they tell themselves they are. And rather than sit with that discomfort, rather than question their own choices, it's easier to make you the problem. It's easier to label you as immature, selfish, broken, incomplete. It's easier to treat you like a threat than to acknowledge that you might actually be onto something. Machiavelli wrote extensively about this in The Prince, particularly in his discussions of how new principalities are established and maintained. He understood that the greatest danger to any established power structure isn't external invasion, it's internal defection. It's people within the system who stop believing in it, who stop participating in it, who find ways to thrive outside of it. Because once that starts happening, once people realize that opting out is possible, the whole structure becomes unstable. And society knows this instinctively. That's why there's so much pressure to conform. That's why there are so many subtle and not so subtle punishments for men who choose differently. That's why you're made to feel like something is wrong with you for wanting a life that doesn't center around traditional family obligations. It's not because your choice is actually harmful to anyone. It's because your choice is threatening to a system that depends on everyone believing there is no choice. And here's the really insidious part. The system has convinced most men that these pressures are coming from within themselves, that the guilt, the doubt, the feeling that something is missing, that's all just natural human psychology. But it's not. It's conditioning. It's programming. It's the result of a lifetime of messages telling you that your value as a man is contingent on your willingness to provide, protect, and procreate. That real men get married and have kids. That bachelor life is something you're supposed to outgrow, not something you consciously choose as a permanent state. And if you don't outgrow it, if you reach 35, 40, 45 and you're still living for yourself, still prioritizing your own goals and happiness, then clearly something went wrong. Clearly you failed to mature. Clearly you're selfish or damaged or afraid of commitment. The system has 1,000 different narratives ready to explain why you made the wrong choice, and all of them are designed to make you doubt yourself, to make you feel inadequate, to make you wonder if maybe everyone else is right and you're the one who's missing something. But here's what Machiavelli would tell you. The people pushing these narratives aren't doing it for your benefit. They're doing it for theirs. They need you to conform because your nonconformity threatens their worldview. They need you to participate in the system because the system requires mass participation to function. And they need you to believe that your individual happiness is less important than your social obligations, because that's how they justify the fact that they prioritized social obligations over their own happiness. This isn't about helping you. This isn't about guiding you toward a better life. This is about protecting a system that benefits from your compliance and punishing defection before it becomes contagious. And the punishment is social. It's psychological. It's the slow, steady accumulation of judgment and suspicion and exclusion that makes you feel isolated and wrong for choosing differently. Think about how this plays out in practical terms. When you're at a social gathering and someone asks if you're married, if you have kids, and you say no, watch what happens. Watch the way the conversation shifts. Watch the assumptions that get made. Watch how quickly you go from being a person to being a problem that needs to be solved. People start offering advice you didn't ask for. They tell you about someone they know who would be perfect for you. They share stories about how they didn't want kids either until they had them, and now they can't imagine life without them. They frame your choice as a phase, a temporary state that you'll eventually move past once you figure things out. And all of this is well-intentioned on the surface. People genuinely think they're helping, but what they're really doing is enforcing conformity. They're communicating that your current path is unacceptable, that you need to change, that you need to become more like them in order to be fully human, fully adult, fully worthy of respect. And if you're successful in your unconventional life, if you're happy and fulfilled and thriving without a family, that makes the response even more aggressive. Because now you're not just a cautionary tale, you're a threat to the narrative. You're proof that the sacrifices they made weren't actually required for happiness and success. And that's unforgivable. That's when the labels really start flying. Narcissist, Peter Pan syndrome, commitment phobe, emotionally unavailable. The system has an entire vocabulary designed to pathologize your choice, to frame it as a deficiency rather than a preference, to suggest that something is broken in you rather than acknowledging that you simply want something different. And this vocabulary is incredibly effective because it doesn't sound like social control. It sounds like concern. It sounds like diagnosis. It sounds like people trying to help you understand what's wrong so you can fix it and finally be happy. But the premise is always the same. You're wrong. Your choice is wrong. Your life is incomplete. And the only way to fix it is to conform. Machiavelli understood this game better than almost anyone in history. He knew that power structures maintain themselves not primarily through force, but through belief, through getting people to internalize the values and assumptions that serve the system rather than the individual, through creating social norms that feel natural and inevitable rather than constructed and optional, and through punishing deviation in ways that feel like natural consequences rather than deliberate enforcement. This is why men without families are treated like threats, not because they're actually dangerous, but because they represent a crack in the foundation. They're living proof that the system is based on choice, not necessity, that the life script everyone is following is optional, not mandatory, that there are other ways to find meaning and purpose and fulfillment that don't require sacrificing your autonomy to the collective good. And once people start seeing that, once men start realizing that they can opt out and not only survive but thrive, the whole structure becomes unstable. Because it turns out that a huge percentage of men only participate in the traditional family structure because they think they have to, not because they actually want to. They've been told their whole lives that this is what being a man means, that this is what responsibility looks like, that this is the path to respect and fulfillment in a life that matters. And they believed it. They internalized it. They built their entire identity around it. So when they encounter someone who rejected all of that and is doing just fine, better than fine even, it creates a crisis. It forces them to confront questions they've been avoiding for years. Did I actually want this? Did I choose this freely? Or did I just do what I was supposed to do without ever really questioning whether it was right for me? And those are painful questions. Those are questions that can destabilize everything. So instead of asking them, instead of doing that difficult internal work, it's easier to dismiss you, to label you, to treat you like the problem. This is the real reason society fears the man without family obligations. Not because he's incomplete, but because he's free. Free from the leverage points that make most men controllable. Free from the obligations that keep most men in line. Free from the fear of loss that makes most men compliant. And that freedom is terrifying to a system built on control. Because if one man can be free and happy, then maybe others can too. Maybe the whole structure of sacrificing individual autonomy for collective benefit isn't as necessary as we've been told. Maybe there are other ways to organize society, other ways to find meaning, other ways to live that don't require everyone to follow the same narrow path. And that possibility, that threat to the established order, that's what makes you dangerous. Not your actions, not your choices, but your example, your proof that another way is possible. Machiavelli would look at this situation and recognize it immediately. He spent his life studying how power works, how societies control individuals, how systems perpetuate themselves even when they no longer serve the people within them. And he understood that the most effective form of control is the kind that people enforce on themselves and each other without even realizing they're doing it. You don't need armies or police forces when you have social norms that make people feel guilty for stepping out of line. You don't need laws when you have cultural expectations that make deviation feel like personal failure. And you don't need overt punishment when you have 1,000 subtle ways to communicate that someone who chooses differently is somehow less than, somehow broken, somehow a threat that needs to be contained or corrected, or at least kept at a distance. This is the brilliance and the horror of how modern social control works. It doesn't feel like control. It feels like common sense. It feels like natural human values. Feels like people genuinely caring about your well-being and wanting you to have the kind of life that will make you happy. But underneath all of that, underneath all the concern and the advice and the judgment disguised as helpfulness, is a simple message: conform or be cast out. Follow the script or be labeled defective. Sacrifice your individual autonomy for the collective good, or be treated as a threat to social order. The genius of this system is that most people never even recognize it as a system. They just think this is how things are, how things have always been, how things are supposed to be. They don't see the machinery of social control because they're inside it, because they've internalized it, because they're both victims and enforcers of the same structure that limits everyone's choices while pretending to be natural and inevitable. But you see it now. That's what this conversation is really about. Opening your eyes to the game being played so you can decide whether you want to keep playing by their rules or write your own. And here's what Machiavelli would tell you about that choice. The path of independence, the path of refusing to conform, the path of building a life according to your own values rather than society's expectations, that path is harder in some ways. You will face judgment. You will face exclusion. You will face moments of doubt when the pressure to conform feels overwhelming, and you wonder if maybe everyone else is right and you're the one who's wrong. But that path is also the only path to genuine freedom. Because as long as you're living according to someone else's script, as long as you're making choices based on what other people expect, rather than what you actually want, you're not really free. You're just a well-behaved participant in a system that benefits from your compliance. And the beautiful irony is that the men who judge you most harshly for choosing freedom are often the ones who are most trapped. They can't even conceive of your choice as valid, because accepting that would mean acknowledging all the freedoms they gave up without questioning whether they had to. It would mean confronting the possibility that their lives could have been different, that they had options they never explored, that the sacrifices they made weren't as necessary or noble as they told themselves, and that's too painful. So instead, they project their regret onto you. They label your freedom as immaturity. They frame your independence as selfishness. They treat your unconventional life as a problem that needs to be solved, rather than a legitimate alternative that they could have chosen, but didn't. This is how trapped people respond to free people, not with admiration or curiosity, but with hostility and judgment designed to pull you back down into the same cage they're in. Machiavelli saw this pattern play out constantly in the political realm. Princes who secured power through unconventional means were treated as illegitimate, even when they ruled more effectively than hereditary monarchs. Leaders who challenged established norms were labeled as dangerous, even when their innovations improved people's lives. And individuals who refused to play by the rules of the existing power structure were treated as threats, regardless of whether they actually posed any danger to anyone. The crime wasn't doing harm. The crime was demonstrating that the rules were optional, that the system was based on choice rather than necessity, that alternative ways of organizing society and living life were possible. And that's the same crime you're committing when you choose to live without the traditional family structure. You're not hurting anyone. You're not doing anything objectively wrong. You're just proving through your existence that the path everyone else is following isn't the only path, and that's enough to make you a threat. So what do you do with this understanding? How do you navigate a world that treats your freedom as a problem? Machiavelli's advice would be simple. Stop seeking approval from people who are invested in your conformity. Stop trying to justify your choices to people who can't understand them, because understanding would threaten their own worldview. Stop internalizing the judgment of a system that benefits from your compliance. Instead, focus on building the life you actually want. Focus on developing genuine self-knowledge about what brings you fulfillment, rather than accepting the default answers society provides. Focus on creating value and meaning on your own terms, rather than measuring yourself against standards that were designed to keep you in line. And most importantly, focus on the reality that you only get one life, and spending it trying to please people who will judge you, no matter what you do, is the ultimate waste of the limited time you have. This doesn't mean you have to be combative or aggressive about your choices. Machiavelli wasn't advocating for unnecessary conflict. He was advocating for clear-eyed realism about how power works and strategic thinking about how to navigate systems that weren't designed with your best interests in mind. You don't have to argue with everyone who questions your life choices. You don't have to convince anyone that your path is valid. You just have to live it with enough conviction that their doubt doesn't shake you, with enough confidence that their judgment doesn't define you, with enough self-knowledge that you can distinguish between genuine self-reflection and internalized social pressure. The goal isn't to fight the system. The goal is to be free of it, to reach a point where what other people think about your choices becomes background noise rather than the primary consideration shaping how you live. And here's the final piece that Machiavelli understood better than almost anyone. The people who are most threatened by your independence are the ones who matter least to your actual life. Think about it. The people who know you best, who understand your values and your goals and what makes you fulfilled, those people generally respect your choices, even if they wouldn't make the same ones themselves. It's the acquaintances, the distant relatives, the colleagues, the randos at social gatherings, the people who don't actually know you and don't actually have a stake in your well-being. Those are the ones who feel entitled to judge you. Those are the ones who treat your unconventional life as a personal affront. Those are the ones whose opinions you're allowing to shape how you feel about yourself. And that's insane when you really think about it. Why would you give decision-making power over your life to people who don't know you, don't understand you, and wouldn't be affected by your choices one way or another? The answer is social conditioning. You've been trained to value the approval of the collective over your own judgment. And breaking that conditioning is the real work of becoming free. So here's where we are. You understand now that the judgment you face for choosing a different path isn't about you. It's about a system that needs conformity to function, and people who need to believe their sacrifices were necessary to feel good about their choices. You understand that being treated like a threat isn't evidence that something is wrong with you. It's evidence that you're doing something right, something genuinely independent, something that challenges the comfortable assumptions most people never question. And you understand that Machiavelli was right 500 years ago and he's still right today. The path to genuine power, genuine freedom, genuine self-determination, that path requires you to stop seeking approval from systems and people who benefit from your compliance. It requires you to build your life according to your own values rather than inherited expectations. And it requires you to accept that you will be judged, you will be questioned, you will be treated with suspicion by people who can't understand why anyone would choose differently than they did. Now here's what I need from you, and this is important. This message only spreads if you spread it. Drop a comment right now with this exact phrase, "I choose freedom over approval." Let's flood this comment section with men who are waking up to this reality, who are refusing to accept the narrative that something is wrong with them for wanting a different kind of life. This isn't just about you. This is about every man who's been made to feel guilty for prioritizing himself. Every man who's been labeled as immature for refusing to follow the script. Every man who knows deep down that he wants something different, but hasn't had the courage to admit it because the social pressure is so intense. Your comment matters. Your voice matters. This community matters. So write it now. I choose freedom over approval. Do it. And while you're down there, hit that subscribe button because this conversation is just getting started. We're building something here, a space where men can talk honestly about the pressures they face, the choices they're making, the lies they've been told about what it means to be a man in the modern world. You need this content in your life, not because I'm special, but because these conversations aren't happening anywhere else. The mainstream culture isn't going to give you permission to think differently. Society isn't going to validate your choice to prioritize yourself. You have to find spaces where these ideas are explored honestly, where your questions are taken seriously, where your experience is recognized as legitimate rather than dismissed as immaturity. This channel is that space. So subscribe. Commit to this journey. Commit to thinking for yourself rather than accepting the default programming. And hit the like button while you're at it because that's how this video reaches more men who need to hear this message. The algorithm rewards engagement, and every like pushes this content to someone who's struggling with the same questions, the same doubts, the same pressure to conform that you've been dealing with. You're not just helping me when you engage with this content. You're helping the next man who needs to understand that he's not broken for wanting something different. That's real impact. That's real community. That's how we change the conversation about what it means to be a man and what choices are actually available to us when we stop accepting the narrative we've been handed. There's something coming in the next video that's going to completely shift how you see relationships and power dynamics. Something that most men never figure out until it's too late, until they've already made irreversible decisions based on incomplete information. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, because you need to discover it the right way, in the right context, with the right framework to understand what you're really looking at. But I will tell you this: once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you understand this dynamic, every interaction you have, every relationship you observe, every social structure you participate in, all of it will look different. This is the kind of knowledge that changes everything. The kind that makes you dangerous to the system, because you understand how it works. So make sure you're here for that. Make sure you're subscribed and watching, because missing this would be missing the foundation of everything else we're building here. Your future self will thank you for showing up. The only question is whether you will.